Today on Chris Fabry Live, an honest conversation about life past middle age. The downhill side of 50 or 60 or wherever you are. That moment when you look in the mirror and you see somebody else's face staring back at you. How did my father get in my mirror? Or your mother. When there's a class reunion and you look around and you wonder, where did all these old people come from? You don't feel old, but inside, you feel much younger than you are on the outside. Our correspondent to the church, the culture, and the heart is Dr. John Kessler. He has been doing some deep thinking along these lines, and I want you to hear his musings today at the Radio Backyard Fence. You'll find us online at chrisfabrylive.org. We thank our team, Ryan McConaughey and Lisa are doing all things technical. Trish is our producer. Josh will be answering your calls. And I really hope if you resonate with the topic today that you'll call us and say you are right on or no, you're way off. So write the number down and give us a call. I'll give it to you here in a minute. Thank you for your support of this program in July. This is the first month of our new fiscal year, and I hope you are enjoying our walk down memory lane. We've presented 3 programs this month already about the 100 years of Moody Radio. Yesterday, did you hear Ruth Dinwiddie? Did you hear Anita Lustria and Stan Ferris and Wayne Shepherd? We are having so much fun celebrating what God has done in the last 100 years through the miracle of radio, Moody Radio. And we are not content to stay where we are. We are building on the foundation that has been laid by faithful men and women, and you will find out about that in the book. This is Moody Radio, 100 years of proclaiming the gospel. It's our thank you right now for anyone who supports us, and I'm getting response. I had an email today from someone who said, hey, my friend, my uncle's friend, Carl, is Carl in the book? And I was able to write back and say, yes, page 113, I think it was. You are going to be thrilled with this journey through history all the way back to 1926 and to the present. Call or click through today, 866-95-FABRY or chrisfabrylive.org. I see those who are giving are following my request earlier in the month for you to be as generous as you can. When you create a book like this with all these pictures and the graphics, the cost of production goes up and it costs more to send it. So thank you for your generosity in coming behind us, getting alongside us here at the back fence. 866-953-2279, or go to chrisfabrylive.org and scroll down. If you are a back fence partner and you give each month, make sure you click the email that we sent out, I think it was on Tuesday, that shows you, I want to get that. And coming up Monday, oh, the fun we'll have. We're going to talk about mornings on Moody, the morning shows through the years. I think the morning show sets the tone for the station for the rest of the day. That's been my experience in different stations where I've worked. So I want to hear the difference made in your life by someone in the morning from 50 years ago or maybe today. Listen Monday for that, and I hope you'll respond to us. Today, it's been a while since we talked with Dr. K. John Kessler is an award-winning author, retired faculty emeritus of pastoral studies at Moody Bible Institute. He's written a number of books. Our featured resource today is Practicing the Present, which will go along with our topic of the life you planned versus the life you are living. Dr. Kessler, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. Wonderful to be here.
Quick story to set this up. So my wife and my son went to the grocery store about 20 minutes from us, and it's in an area where a lot of retirees live. And so you got to slow down when you go there. And so my wife went up and she went to the self-checkout lane, and my son said, oh, go ahead, Mom, I need to go grab something else. And so he got in line. By the time he got back, there was a guy in front of him. And my wife was in the very first checkout lane, and she was having problems with getting her rewards number or whatever you call it, or she couldn't get something to weigh, she couldn't get her asparagus to weigh or whatever that was, and she had to call the attendant over and say, hey, help me. And the fellow in front of my son, under his breath, he didn't say this to anybody else, it was just under his breath, loud enough for my son to hear, said, old people are killing me. Just like that. And when my son got back, I said, well, what did you say? Did you say anything? Because I went through all the permutations of what I would say, and most of them started with, hey, pal, And he said, I didn't say anything to him, Dad, but I thought all the way home, great things that I could have said. But old people are killing me. And I wanted to use that story to start the program today. John, how do you respond to that?
Well, I got to say, they're killing me too. And I'm 73, or I'm going to be 73, I mean, honestly, I resonate with it. I go to the gym, pretty regularly, and I look around the gym and I say, where did all these old people come from? Of course, they all come because they get, silver sneakers or something. But there is, first of all, I think on my part, it's just an act of denial. I look in the mirror and I actually don't even really see my father, because now I'm like about 10 years older than he was, when he passed. So. But I see, like, who is that old man who is looking at me, who looks like my dad? So there is part of it. On the one hand, there's a part of it that is sort of like the inner youth is wrestling with the reality, and I also think that there is underlying that. So some of the things you're seeing there in the behavior, the slowness, the difficulty grasping, the awkward conversations, that there is a reality in aging of should we call it, debilitation, that we don't really like. We don't like to be reminded of when we see people who their faculties are weakening, they're not going as fast, and we're being affected by it because we have to wait patiently for them. And then if it's me standing behind them, then I'm reminded of, like, yeah, that's the way I'm feeling is how the guy behind me is feeling about me. So.
Exactly. Yes. You're looking in the mirror in the rear view. Okay. So that happened with I laugh every time I think of this because it's so him. George, my wife's dad, George, World War II vet, crusty old guy. He was in his 90s. He was living at a place, retirement area. It wasn't assisted living, but it was close to it. And so they would have daily scheduled things. And my wife went down, just to visit and to see how he was doing and see if she could take care of things, because she wanted him to get rid of his car because she didn't want him driving anymore. And so she said, Dad, there's this Trivial Pursuit thing and he was great at that. He could remember things from way back. This Trivial Pursuit, we got to go down and have you play. And he goes, I don't want to do that. Why not? Because there's nothing but old people down there, and everybody there was younger than he was.
Right? Yeah.
That's the denial.
I as long as we're sharing stories, it came to my mind. My wife Jane, her great aunt, when she was in her 80s, and she was in fact, she lived in, far into her 90s. In fact, she got so old that one day she was in the doctor's office, and the nurses kept peeking in because they had never seen a woman that old. So they were all sort of peeking in just to take a look. Anyway, she was at home and she would get Meals on Wheels. Mm-hmm. And one day Jane was visiting and the Meals on Wheels person came, and her aunt turns to her and says, some of these people who deliver Meals on Wheels are quite elderly. So
that is so funny.
Yeah, there you go. It's
okay. My mother bought the plan at the local funeral home where, she took all of the clothes that she had in and this is what I want to happen. And before she could die, the funeral home closed. She outlived the funeral home. Yeah, we laughed about that and on and on. But here's what I want you to talk about. I want to hear your heart about how you're processing all this, the life that you had planned, and the life that you are now living. So let me take a break. We'll come back. Dr. John Kessler is our guest today. Practicing the Present is a really good book that we could talk about the whole hour today. But I wanted to deal with this topic of aging and how we are dealing with it. Is this what you're dealing with today? 877-548-56 3675 is our number. More straight ahead on Moody Radio. This is Chris Fabry Live on Moody Radio. I'm Chris Fabry. We're live. Dr. John Kessler is back. It's been a while since he's been here. And I asked him the other day, what's rolling around your soul? And this is what we decided to talk about. And my guess is there's somebody else who's right in the middle of this. On Facebook, I said, are you struggling with getting older? Not so much with age, but with how society treats those who are older. How do you overcome the marginalization? These old people are killing me. In a sense, how do you combat the lies about growing older, that you get marginalized, that you don't mean anything anymore? And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is I knew that John would be really open and honest with us, because you were, in your emails back to me, this is where you are and what you are struggling with. So tell me more about it.
Well, I told somebody the other day, we were talking about retirement, and I said, sometimes it feels like I'm disappearing. And I am, and I'm not struggling really so much with how society treats me, because basically society ignores me, so I'm okay with that. It's the way I think about myself. And I'm thinking about it on two levels. The one level, where I'm wrestling is like, well, what does it mean for me to be a person? And especially, what does it mean for me to be a follower of Jesus in the life that I live now, where I'm not really doing any of the things that I did for decades that I thought of as serving him. And to be frank, with pretty much ignored in church, and so I go to church, I sit down and go out, and even the things that I wanted to, that I used to love to do, I find that many of them, I don't want to do those things anymore. So what does it mean? I hate all the music, what does it mean for me to live for Jesus in this space that I'm in? And then, of course, that inevitably drives me back to what I was doing. What was my history of ministry and work and my family life? And then I began to compare, as your title suggests, the life I lived with the life that I expected. So, retirement, the term suggests rest, but it's also a time for reflection. And I think that's common as we get older. And one of the challenges you face is coming to terms with that gap that exists between the life we lived and the life we'd planned for ourselves. And, when we're in the building years, we're mainly thinking about goals and expectations. So our motto is the watchword of William Carey: expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. And in all those years, the only question that really seems to matter to us is, well, how can I get this done? How can I accomplish this? And this being the great thing that I'm expecting or attempting. In later years, the more thoughtful, and I think the more troubling question arises is, well, why did I do that? Or why didn't I do that? Why didn't God open that door? Or if what he allowed me to do, why couldn't I do it better? Why couldn't I do it more extensively? Why didn't he let me do that at all? And so, then I dream about work, my old job. I dream about it all the time. And it's always a nightmare. I am always, trying to find my office, trying to find my classroom, trying to teach a class. I can't find my notes. I was telling my son about it. And he said, I think maybe you're misreading the meaning of that dream. He said, because it's not telling you that was your heart's desire and it's gone. It's telling you that could not fill your heart, that really wasn't what you were longing for. I thought it was a very interesting take on it.
Yeah, well, I need to have your son on the program. He
Yeah,
sounds like
you really, yeah, he'd be
he's
fun.
a philosopher. Well, that was one of my questions is in dreaming about the job that you no longer have, are you in a sense you're not just living in the past, thinking about it, you're dreaming in the past.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that brings up an even deeper sense of what do I do with what I have now, because it's not what I expected or not the out. It's all about the outcome. It's all about we judge our life by the outcome of what we thought would happen and what has happened, and then the distance between those two. And earlier in your life, you think, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, how do I get from here to there? And you expect God to fill in that gap. And when he doesn't, what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's a very curious thing to me because if I look at it from one angle, everything that I wanted to do, both in terms of my life and especially in my calling, to follow Christ, I did it all. I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a writer. Uh, so if I look at it from one angle, I feel like I should be really proud of myself or something. I should look at it and say, "Wow, that's fabulous." And then I look at it from another angle, and this is what I find age does for me. That I look at it from an angle, and the sort of the luster of it falls off, and I say, "Well, you were a pastor, but you pastored a small church and you weren't as good at it as you think you were. Oh yeah, you were a professor, but uh, you weren't really, you weren't one of the really, really popular professors, and you didn't really get to speak at all the conferences. And yeah, you were a writer, but like, who's reading your books now?" So, which is where I wrestle with is like, well, is it just sort of the reality of Ecclesiastes, that as you age, you begin to see the reality that all life really is vanity and it's just a breath. And the thing that this is God sort of weaning me off of earth and preparing me for eternity. Or is it just depression? Is it just what happens when you get old and you get grumpy? And
Yes. And more self-focused.
Yeah,
Because if you're only looking at yourself, then you can go down that wormhole, and think more about it. I thank you for being honest with us, because I think there are a lot of people who are listening right now who are like, yeah, that's what I'm living here today. And what they are expecting now for you to do is to give them 3 points, 3 verses, principles of, and do this to fix my life. Because that's what
Right.
we are about in the church is we present the problem and then we give you the fix. We give you in 30 minutes, or with this program, 54 and a half. We give you all of the answers to all of your problems. And my sense is that you're not going to do that today.
No, except to say, yes, the solution is to buy all my books in multiple copies,
Yeah.
that I really don't think there is a quick fix in this, that number one, part of it really is this stripping away that God does, as we age, that things start to fall away and you are then sort of left naked in the reality that the only ultimate relationship you have that is meaningful is the relationship you have with God through Christ. And it's not, I don't mean to diminish, my life or what God has done through it, because all of those things I list, those are all real accomplishments and they were things that God did in me. But when we kind of get caught up in all of that, I was thinking about this notion of the purpose driven life, and I was which I know I know that was made popular, that the idea was made popular, but really the notion of living a purposeful life, it's very old, it's very ancient. And I realized that really most of my life was, I feel like, has been sort of focused on these questions, worrying about my purpose. When I was in college, I had to find it, and really basically that meant was like, who am I going to marry and what kind of a job am I going to get? And then when I was older, it meant achieving it, which was a matter of making whatever that vision for my life was a reality. And then when I retired, that raised all this whole host of questions not only about what am I supposed to do now, but the hard question about what I had been doing for all these years. And the difficulty is that when purpose becomes our main purpose, we just end up living on a treadmill. And I contrast that with the answer to the question from the Westminster Confession: what is the chief end of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. That's a very different outlook. And in a sense, now I've come to this point and say, well, there it is. That's all I have in front of me, is the opportunity to glorify God in a world that basically says, your value depends on what you produce. Your value depends on what you can do for us. And from where we sit, it doesn't really look like you could do all that much.
Bingo. So all along, like the dream and the way that your son couched it, the truth of what you're living right now, what you're saying and what you're processing about the judgment that you have on your life can be flipped around if you say, the only thing that will truly give me lasting purpose and meaning in my life and happiness, I don't like that word, but joy, is to see that my chief end is to glorify him and enjoy him, and that he delights in me. That's the other question that I thought of you is like, do you see his delight in what you did as a pastor, what you did as a professor, what you have done as an author and still are doing? Do you sense that?
That's a really interesting question. And I'm going to give you an honest answer. I think he doesn't care. Not in the way that I care about it in this regard. I'm not saying that it's meaningless. I think what I did, in terms of being a pastor and being a teacher and being a writer, I did those things out of what I felt was a call from God. It was vocational. And I felt that God enabled me and helped me to do them with some level of skill. But none of those things, in terms of the performance of them, none of those things was as important to God as they were to me. In this respect, I wanted to pastor a certain kind of church. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to preach to large crowds. I wanted to be a popular teacher, and I wished my class could be the one that you couldn't get into because so many people wanted to get into it. And I wanted to be a successful writer, and I wanted to be a bestseller. Who doesn't? And I could tell that just was not interested. God was not interested in that. That was not his agenda.
Yet.
Never. No, see, I don't. Honestly, I don't believe it.
But John, you have no idea. And here's what Charles Martin is a fiction writer, and he has said, I picture in heaven a library and walking in to God bringing me into the library and him having my books on there and saying, this is what I really liked about this one, and this is what. And can you imagine? Somebody, even the book that we have the featured resource, Practicing the Present. Can you imagine in heaven walking into a room and seeing the people who were deeply touched by the thing that you were thinking about and working through and putting on the page as the best that you could. Can you imagine the people who are in that room without making a joke about it and saying it's a telephone booth?
Yeah.
Okay, don't
No,
do that. But can you imagine the feeling that you would have when God shows his delight about what he enabled you to do?
Okay. I really appreciate that suggestion, but I'm going to give you my blunt and honest answer.
Okay, wait, don't give it to me. Don't give it to me because we're going to take a break. And when we come back, you got to be back here for Dr. John Kessler's blunt answer to that. And I want to hear from you. Is what we're saying, is there anybody in the sound of our voice who's resonating with what we're talking about here with aging and living the life that you have now versus the one that you had planned? Is there a gulf in between there? Here's the number, 877-548-3675. I want to hear your voice today, 877-548-3675. More straight ahead. Real life, real heart issues. That's what we tackle every day at the Radio Backyard Fence. And thank you for your support of the program, To, For, and From the Heart. Our thank you this month, as we've been saying, is the book, The Historical Look at 100 Years of Moody Radio. Just go to the website, chrisfavorylive.org, scroll down, and you'll see it right there. Love to send you a copy, and thanks for your generosity here in July. chrisfavorylive.org, where you'll also find out about Dr. John Kessler. Our featured resource from him is Practicing the Present. And click through the information right there, and you can find out more about that. Okay, I did not talk with Dr. Kessler. I do not know what he is going to say, but I set it up. In heaven, God brings you in, or Jesus brings you in, and he shows you the books that you have written and the way that he has, through his Spirit, helped you put this on the page, and you've got people there who've responded to it. His delight with what you have done, with who you are. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, I had that fantasy like just yesterday.
No.
I seriously did. I thought, oh, what if I met Jesus and he had my books and he started to go through them and say, oh, this was my favorite passage. You're such a good writer. And I concluded that that is all wrong. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because it's all about me. When I meet Christ, I want it to be all about him. However, 1 Corinthians 4:5 says this, therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. Now, is that a promise or is it a threat? He's going to expose the motives of each heart. I think it's a promise. And I think it is a promise to those who are in Christ that what will happen in judgment for those who belong to Christ is they will see the true value of what they have done, because that value does not come from them. It comes from what Christ has invested in them. It's like our worship. It is our worship that yes. Everything that we do, everything that we offer, we give to Christ, and he presents it to the Father on our behalf. And it is somehow, it is because it is transformed by his grace and his glory, it becomes more than we could imagine that it really is.
But isn't that part of what we then offer to him? Because the parallel passage that I was thinking of is Ephesians, you're saved by grace through faith. This is not of yourselves, it's God's gift, not from works, so that no one can boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do. So that scene in the library is, these are the good works that I created you to do, that you accomplished to my glory. So it's not all about you. It really does all go back to him.
Right, because it is the work is his workmanship.
Yes.
And I do think in that sense that is one of the things that happens um, in judgment for the Christian, that we see the whole picture. We see the value of what was done. In fact, we see the things that really were done. One of the lessons I learned from Paul's warning in First Corinthians is that we are really not in a position at this point to evaluate how we have served and what we have done. And that's what Paul says to the Corinthians, is I don't even judge myself, because I don't have the perspective to understand, to see what God was really doing. That same thing is true with the harder question that lies behind the way that we framed the conversation, the life that we lived and the life that we wanted. There are, what would we call them? Darker issues of tragedies, of disappointments, of why didn't my kids turn out the way I wanted them to, or why do I have that long space in my life where I made choices that now I regret and I can't go back. I lived the life that I lived, and I can't. There's no do-over there. That we will see this overarching goodness and grace of God in Christ that draws all of that into the redemptive work of Christ, and we will see it differently. Yes. And in the end, all we will see is redemption and glory because of Christ. And
that's Dr. John Kessler. I got Debbie on the line. Debbie wants to talk to you. Hi, Debbie. Why did you call today?
Hi, Chris. Yes, I just wanted to share that 5 years ago, my husband passed away after 50 years of marriage, very suddenly, not sick. And of course, it was extremely difficult, the hardest thing I've ever gone through. But I found a new church after he passed, and I just got so connected with Christ. I was a born-again Christian before that, but not truly living in the Spirit. And so now for 3 or 4 years, I've just had the most incredible relationship with Christ. The best years of my life have been these last 3 or 4 years. And I just wouldn't even exchange, if I could have my husband back, I wouldn't exchange them for these beautiful years with God. And I know that my husband's in heaven, and I know that I'm living with Christ here, and it's just the best of all worlds.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you a question. Did you go to the new church because it was too hard to go to the old church? Why did you choose that one?
Yeah, I understand. Actually, no. We weren't regularly attending anywhere. We were for a while. It was kind of a milquetoast relationship with Christ at that time. We were Christians, but we weren't living for him. Our life hadn't changed in any great way. So no, this was just a new church in my town, and it was actually a new church in the town. So it was
I can hear the
I'm gonna
vibrancy.
check that place out.
I can hear the verve in your voice. John, what do you say?
Well, I'd say that Debbie's a good example of the fact that it's never too late to open your heart and your life to Christ. And, you can have that. That's why looking back can become such a trap, particularly, when we look back at our mistakes and the way that things we wish we hadn't done, we fail to see the path that lies in front of us, and that we can really, maybe I haven't had a great relationship with Christ for decades. He's waiting. He's there. His arms are wide open. Yes. And you can have, it's not going to keep you, whatever the past was, it will not keep you from having a profoundly deep relationship with him now, no matter when you turn to him. So that's a great story.
I'm glad you got through, Debbie. Somebody needed to hear that story from you today. And Charles is on the line now. Charles is a little concerned about you, Dr. Kessler. Let's talk with him. Hey, Charles,
he's
you're
not the
ahead.
only one.
Yeah.
As I listen to you talk, and Brother Kessler, we're the same age. I'm pastoring a small church as well as working a secular job, and I kind of, there's a couple of thoughts that I had was the walk of faith. I mean, as you've done what you've done, you've touched many lives. I think of the students that you've pastored, because that's what you really did, even though you were a professor, as well as pastoring. And the fulfillment of all of that, even now as you're not doing the same thing, you still are. And I just see it as a huge walk of faith. And I just, be honest with you, brother, I was kind of a little bothered to sound that you sounded like you kind of were not happy with where things ended up.
Well, I appreciate that, Charles, and I take a couple of things. One is I think I'm probably not that happy. I think in one sense there is I won't deny that there's an unsettledness, that I wrestle with, which is probably just part of my nature. But I have also learned that one of the things that happens is, as you describe it, that I am still the same person in many respects, doing the same things, and the scale may be different. So I still teach a Bible study with a small group of friends. That's how I began my serving Christ. My wife Jane likes to remind me of that she met me in a Bible study. I was leading a Bible study when I began to follow Christ, and now that I'm on whatever this last slope is into glory, I'm doing the thing I was doing at the beginning. That's a good thing, really. But there is always that part of me that says, well, it could be thousands. So, but no, you're right. I mean, I think you're right that it is, and Charles, you're right also to say that the heart of it is a matter of faith. And I think that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that it isn't the performance, it isn't the scale. It really is that sense of trust in Christ and to allow him to use you in whatever way that he sees fit,
Yes.
And so
that's why I like the Psalms, because the Psalms, and I think and Charles, thank you for your call. I think that's what you're bringing to us is the Psalm. It's not is it Psalm 90 or 91? The one about the old age.
Yeah, Psalm 90.
90. You had to be where you are, and the psalmist, I was reading Psalm 22 this morning, and which begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is what Jesus cried from the cross and identified with. And I've been reading through Spurgeon's look at the Psalms very in depth. And in today's reading, he says, this is true wrestling. Let us learn the art, observe the ancient saints who cried and trusted, and that in times of trouble we must do the same.
Yeah.
And the invariable result was they were not ashamed of their hope, for deliverance came in due time. But for some in the middle of it, listening right now, it's like deliverance hasn't come, and I've been crying out for it. You can't be somewhere where you aren't, and that's what we're talking about with Dr. John Kessler today. Practicing the Present is our featured resource at chrisfabrylive.org, chrisfabrylive.org. You can answer the question we have for you on Facebook today. Would love to hear from you at 877-548-3675. Our remaining moments straight ahead on Moody Radio. got a voicemail from someone who said, thanks for having Jay Kessler on the program. Remember Jay Kessler? Oh, I love Jay Kessler. But this is Dr. John Kessler. No relation, I don't believe. And he said, you are describing my life, and I am looking for the 3 points, the 3 principles, please fix my life for me. He said that jokingly. But I think where this caller is, where you and I both are, John, as we're looking at this, looking deeply at this, most people live lives of quiet desperation that we fill with scrolling, we fill up with something else so that we don't have to think about this. And the main thing, the bottom of this well or this circle that we go down is the question of identity. Who am I really? And that's where I wanted to get here in this segment. So talk about that identity.
Yeah, first you have to ask yourself, like, well, what is it that shapes identity? What are the markers of identity? And it's really a confluence of several things. It's not just one thing, at least in terms of experience, right? It's birth, it's where you're located, it's affiliation. And one of the major markers has to do with what we call vocation or calling. I mean, if you think about your interactions with people who you just meet, one of the first questions that you are usually asked is, well, what do you do? Well, what are they saying? What are they really asking? I think what they're really asking is, who are you? They're trying to locate you. Well, what happens when you can no longer do what you've done for so many years? I think there's a couple of things. One is muscle memory, that you miss. There's something about, you inside of you that misses the rhythm, that misses the work. But I think your psyche also misses the identity that offers. So for the guy, our friend in the voicemail, here's the principle. Here's the key. We are more than what we do. But we come to these places, and the one that we are most familiar with is what happens in adolescence, where we're trying to figure out who we are. In later life, something similar happens, where now I don't know who I am because I no longer do the things that I used to do. There's this, I mentioned him to you, there's an interesting blogger on Substack who calls himself the Old Gray Thinker. And he wrote a post about identity, and I thought it was brilliant. He said, in one of his posts, he describes how for 40 years he thought of himself as a captain because that's what he did for a living. And he writes, I didn't own my identity. I understand now I was renting it. The system was leasing it to me in exchange for my work, my time, my years. While I was useful to the system, I got to use the identity. The moment the lease ended, the identity returned to the system. And I felt a shock of recognition when I read it. And then I also thought of something that my colleague Pam McCrae, who teaches at Moody Bible Institute, talked about, described to me the difficult shift that many women feel when their children become adults. They have the sense of self that's been shaped by being a mother and all that goes with that. And then a day comes when their children are gone, they're grown, they're out of the home. And it's not that they're no longer a mother or even that they're no longer needed, but that role is no longer the center of gravity in their lives, and they don't feel needed to the same degree. And it often, I think, produces a crisis. So, okay, now we come into these later years and we're reviewing and assessing, where do we get our identity from? Well, we get it from the same location that we always have had it, that our identity ultimately comes in Christ. It's bound up in Christ. So in Colossians 3:2-4, Paul says, set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, you will also appear with him in glory. And the implication is that glory, which is his, which he has given to you, you will share it. It will be reflected in you. That's what you will be and who you will be. And I thought of this lovely song that Keith and Kristyn Getty have done that captures this thought. People who listen to Moody Radio have heard it, I'm sure. My worth is not in skill or name, in win or loss, in pride or shame, but in the blood of Christ that flowed at the cross. I rejoice in my Redeemer, greatest treasure, wellspring of my soul. I will trust in him, no other. My soul is satisfied in him alone. There's your identity.
Yeah. And that's not a 3-step easy process either, but it is a process. And maybe that's where, and I've got some other callers, and Kathy, I saw your question. Kathy's in her 70s, and she said, I feel like I'm right in the center of the target of what you're talking about. My purpose, I don't see it. Is there a prayer? Is there something you say to God in this season and you ask him for, show me my purpose? What do you say, John?
My prayer is, Jesus, save me, love me, guide me, keep me. Amen.
Amen. Indeed. John, thanks for being, I said this to Anita Lustria yesterday. She was on the program, used to do Midday Connection with us here on Moody Radio. But I said that the secret sauce of Midday, of that program, was the authenticity, was the honesty, and the safety. You felt safe when you could be with the folks that talked there. I feel the same thing with you coming through here today. You're just being honest with us about the struggle, about the wrestling. Keep doing that, friend. Keep writing. I'm going to your library party in heaven, okay?
Okay, you're invited.
I'm going to be there with bells. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation today at the Radio Backyard Fence. Go to the website, chrisfabrylive.org. You'll see more about Dr. Kessler. See our resource that we'd love to send you right there, chrisfabrylive.org. Our program's a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.